Energy ministers from Ottawa and the Atlantic provinces met in Charlottetown today discussing the future of the proposed Atlantic Energy Gateway, a plan to improve regional collaboration on renewable energy, especially electricity. Not far away, a parallel conference of anti-fracking groups held their own sessions on the region's energy future. Mark Darcy is with NB Water First. He joins me today from our Charlottetown studio. Mark Darcy, good of you to join us. Fracking isn't even on the agenda of this regional energy ministers meeting, so why are you folks there?
Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia and New Brunswick are all slated for future shale gas exploration and development. Nova Scotia has a temporary moratorium. PEI is waiting for the United States EPA report to come out perhaps in a year and a half's time, and we know that New Brunswick is proceeding with shale gas exploration. So all three maritime provinces have to be very vigilant about this.
Well, the focus for the ministers at their meeting today appears to be, in their own words, on clean and renewable sources of energy, primarily electricity. That must be music to your ears.
This is primarily a convention for a lot of the oil and gas industry. These are traditional, conventional oil and gas extraction together with unconventional shale gas. And we're seeing a heavy slant towards those industries, not wind power, and certainly very little mention of solar and other renewable energies.
And yet we heard Joe Oliver and New Brunswick's Craig Leonard both give a nod to those alternative sources of energy. Are you saying that that's a distraction, a red herring? They're not really talking about those subjects?
The International Energy Agency, which provides input to the G20 countries, is saying that if we don't stop business as usual with oil and gas extraction, we're headed for 4 degrees Celsius or more increase in temperature by the end of the century. We really need to stop climate change, stop the use of fossil fuels, and get on to the job of retooling our economy to renewables. And we have to start doing it now.
Understood. And I guess what I'm saying is the ministers gathered at that meeting in Charlottetown today are talking about that very thing, renewable energy sources, whether it's electricity or wind power, primarily electricity. They're talking about Muskrat Falls and talking about an Atlantic Energy Gateway and how best the four provinces might cooperate. Surely you want to see them moving in that direction rather than in the direction of fracking and oil extraction.
There's also a lot of talk about exploration in the Gulf of St. Lawrence.
Yeah.
And we know the positions of the governments towards shale gas. All of these fossil fuel extraction processes have to be off the table.
Off the table completely.
Off the table completely.
Right.
We are talking about catastrophic environmental and health changes for our children. And every one of us has an obligation to really convince our politicians we need to take climate change seriously and stop what I feel is a disinformation and avoidance tactics by our governments. They may talk about renewables, but at the end of the day, they're not implementing the necessary economic incentives like Germany, like Scandinavia, who are 20 years ahead of us in terms of the green economy.
So in terms of those incentives, what do you think the ministers should be discussing today and tomorrow as they meet in Charlottetown?
How do you get private citizens and businesses to invest in solar, wind, and other renewable energy projects at a local level? This is how they do it in Germany and Scandinavia. Huge success. We are talking hundreds of billions of dollars of private money going into local energy systems, and better jobs, more jobs, and we have a lot of resources in New Brunswick and PEI and Nova Scotia. There's a lot of countries with higher GDP economies with less resources than we have. We have to start looking at those countries for leadership and to basically duplicate a lot of their success stories.
Just quickly, we're running out of time, and I do have to go, but I want to ask you before I do, is there any indication from the ministers that they're hearing what you and other groups involved in your convention today are saying?
There are a few members of the public that are in the convention. They are asking some questions, but there's very, very little dialogue about climate change. So I don't think that many of these politicians, certainly the oil and gas industry people, don't want to talk about this issue.
All right, Mark Darcy, thank you for your time today. Good talking to you.
All right, thank you, Harry.
Mark Darcy is with NB Water First. I spoke with him from our Charlottetown studio. And the Atlantic Energy and